Okay, so I've tried to write a video on this for the last few hours, and I haven't been able to kind of synthesize my thoughts. So rather than just kind of keep writing and, fumbling around with my words, I think this video is going to be a little bit different, and it's just going to be me talking about something that I potentially see in the chapter, but I'm not really sure about. And it's something that I really love finding in literature, which is this. There are little golden threads throughout the literature, like how one chapter might connect to a different chapter, and like how this is more like structural analysis, like how J.R.R. Tolkien, from one chapter to another, structures the tension in his chapters, and it's really really astounding that he does this, and he does this in a really really good way. And I want to talk about that, but all my thoughts are very unorganized on this. So really, this video is going to be like a plea for what you think about this idea as well, and what you see as like the byline behind how J.R.R. Tolkien crafts a chapter that is filled with tension and like beasts or enemies or monsters. The reason that I think of this is for another chapter that I really think reminded me of this one, because let me talk about this one. So I just finished the chapter, which is the Passage of the Marshes. And in this chapter, it's very similar to the Journey in the Dark chapter, but a little bit different. In the Journey in the Dark chapter, there are beasts that have definitive shape to them, and they are chasing down the company or the fellowship. And you never really see what these beasts are. So the first one is the wolves that come and attack them right before they're going to leave from Caradhras and go into Moria. The wolves come and attack them. They flee and they go to the gates of Moria. They get accosted by the Watcher of the Water. You don't really ever see the Watcher. You don't really even ever see the wolves because the wolves are in the dark. As soon as they go into Moria, then there's orcs all about that you don't ever see, but there's always this threat of the orcs. And then at the very, very end, and this is the one thing that I think is the thread throughout it, which is the deeper tension of the whole story. It's like, yes, these things are kind of terrifying. The Watcher in the Water is maybe one of the more terrifying things that we've seen in all of Middle-earth. It's like a deeper creature. I think Gandalf even kind of talks about that. The same thing. The wolves were scary. The Watcher in the Water was scary. The orcs are scary. But to be honest, the scariest thing in that whole chapter for me is the feet. I still remember that image in my head of Frodo hearing the feet pitter-patter on the stone, following behind them. That is like my worst nightmare. It's like when you are, right before you're about to go to bed, people do this as kids, and I still do this as an adult, because it can be a little scary. You turn off the lights in one room and you sprint to the next one because you feel like someone's going to chase you. Or like, you go take out your garbage, and as soon as you put the garbage in the bin, you run back to your house because you're terrified someone's going to chase you after that. It's like irrational fear, but still, it's fear nonetheless. And the Journey in the Dark chapter had that, because it's like, it's this idea of all these things. There's this present darkness that's happening, and there's this thing that's like, terrifying, but still there's a deeper, more terrifying thing that really isn't all that terrifying because they just tamed him in the chapter before this chapter that I read. But in the Journey in the Dark chapter, you don't really know Smeagol. You hear rumors of him, and it's terrifying, and you think, oh, this little pitter-patter of the feet is definitely Gollum, and it's so horrifying. That was honestly the scariest part in the chapter, with the wolves and the Watcher in the Water and the threat of the Balrog and the orcs running about. I was most scared of this little creature, Smeagol, following me. And it reminded me too of a previous chapter that I want to talk about. And this is really interesting too, I think, because J.R.R. Tolkien does a really good job of naming his chapters. I still think my favorite chapter at the moment in the entire series is the Conspiracy Unmasked chapter. When you go into that chapter thinking that, okay, Frodo's taking a journey, and the entire time he's going to his house, he's like, I have to go and tell these my friends that I'm going to do this alone. And so the whole time you think he's going to walk to this house and he's going to tell his friends, and the Conspiracy Unmasked is going to be Frodo telling them, hey guys, now I have to go do this journey on my own. You think that's a Conspiracy Unmasked. But then as soon as you get into the chapter, you realize that Pippin And Merry had hired Sam, not hired, but like they told Sam to spy on Frodo. And they already know everything about the plot. And they even already know everything about the ring because they kind of observed Bilbo. So it's a fantastic chapter that kind of flips the idea of who is the one unmasking the conspiracy here. And I just thought that chapter was so incredible. The loyalty that Merry and Pippin show, and even Sam obviously showed to Frodo in that moment, is just beautiful. Still one of my favorite chapters, if not my favorite. So Tolkien is incredible at naming chapters. And even the chapter, The Journey in the Dark, it's a great chapter on horror writing because what he's doing is showing that if you don't show what a creature looks like, it's actually more terrifying than showing what a creature looks like. And then we get to other chapters, and this is the other chapter that I kind of had in mind with this, was the Fog on the Barrow Downs chapter. And he names this chapter really good because the whole chapter does feel shrouded in fog and mist. There are these creatures called the Barrow Wights, and they are kind of like fog dwellers, or maybe they're the ones that cause all the fog, and they live in these barrows, right? These like little tombs, and they woo Frodo down. The whole thing is terrifying. And when Frodo runs ahead into the fog ahead of the group, and they can't find him because they're all shrouded in this fog, it's just like you don't know what's happening around you. And all of a sudden, the way that they defeat that is by Frodo singing a song, which seems very appropriate for J.R.R. Tolkien. I used to hate all the songs that he included in this, but I'm actually starting to understand in a deep way why these songs are so important, especially in Middle-earth. But he starts to sing a song about Tom Bombadil. Tom Bombadil then comes to rescue him. It's like a little beacon of light coming down into this foggy place. So the chapter is incredible. And then right after this, when the next chapter starts, it's like the threat starts ramping up again because they're headed to Bree. And as soon as they get past the wall or the gates of Bree, there's that one sentence that says like a skulking figure, like, passed over, he avoided seeing the gatekeeper and was like following after Frodo. And that whole section, because I've seen the movies, I'm like, oh, is this Gollum? It's creepy. Now it's not Gollum. You actually realize that it's Aragorn. But the tension that Tolkien builds in like this is like a red herring. This is like he's making you think that this person is evil and this is a black rider following him. But all of a sudden he pulls the carpet over or out from your eyes, and you realize that no, this isn't the Nazgul. This isn't Smeagol. That this is Aragorn actually. And then again, back to the Journey in the Dark chapter. The scariest thing is that Gollum actually is following them. But in the current chapter, it felt like an action-oriented chapter, which is the passage of the Marshes. We come across a few different beasts and a few different confusing things. So this is the marsh itself has like a quality to it that feels alive and dead at the same time. Like the marsh is moving, the marsh is growing over these burial mounds. And these people are like under this water. And then all of a sudden there's this one section where Sam sees something, but he's not really sure that he's seeing something. I gotta find this because it's just so good. It's just so creepy too. Like this whole section is just so terrifyingly creepy. Presently it grew altogether dark. The air itself seemed black and heavy to breathe. When lights appeared, Sam rubbed his eyes. He thought his head was going queer. He first saw one with the corner of his left eye, a wisp of pale sheen that faded away. But others appeared soon after. Some like dimly shining smoke, some like misty flames flickering slowly above, unseen candles. Here and there they twisted like ghostly sheets, unfurled by hidden hands. But neither of his companions spoke a word. At last Sam could bear it no longer. "What's all this, Gollum?" he said in a whisper. "These lights. They're all around us now. Are we trapped? Who are they?" Gollum looked up. A dark water was before him, and he was crawling on the ground, this way and that, doubtful of the way. "Yes, they are all around us," he whispered. "The tricksy lights, candles of corpses. Yes, yes. Don't you heed them. Don't look. Don't follow them. Where's the master?" And they look back and they find Frodo is kind of like standing like entranced looking at one of these things. And you have these things that I don't really know what they are. They're like these wisps of smoke, but they have lights. It just seems like well-lit mist. It's like a really weird description of these things, but I've never encountered this in literature before, and it's just like creepy. And it's like exactly like this creature would for sure be dwelling in a marsh. It's just really interesting how Tolkien fashions and crafts these chapters in a way that you just feel part of it and feel immersed in it. So one of the first dangers in this chapter are these wispy creatures. The second danger is the marsh itself, and that they really don't know how to go through it. And Smeagol at points almost seems to be guessing. Like, just in the passage I just read, he's like turning his head this way and this way, not really sure which way to go. Another danger that you have is this danger of the Nazgul over their head. They keep hearing these fell beasts, and they keep hearing the Nazgul screaming over their head. And Smeagol is smelling something, probably smelling Mordor, and he has a lot of PTSD. And there's one section where I think that Smeagol like puts his head down, and he cannot be aroused for more than, I think it takes him like a few hours, and Frodo has to do it by drawing his sword. It was wild to me. So there's all these dangers around. And I think this is something that Tolkien does excellently in building and crafting tension and horror. I think it's one of his best qualities as a writer. And I say that, I use hyperbole a lot when I talk about Tolkien. Like I say, this is his best, this is his best. I genuinely think that there's no writer that I have read that compares to him in this sense, in how he builds tension and how he builds like the culmination of what's going to happen. Because he just has people, he has like unknown things following you. When the three hunters were, following the orcs, they all of a sudden go to the edge of Fangorn Forest, and there's this old man who pops out of the forest and then disappears. And it just creates so much tension because you're so unsure of what this is and you don't know what's going on. And the same thing is true. The most tense that I felt in the Journey in the Dark chapter was not for all these terrible beasts and monsters that were happening. It was for Smeagol and the soft little pittering that was following them that Frodo could hear every once in a while. And I think the most dangerous thing in this chapter, which is a progression for what he's doing, is the most dangerous thing feels like Smeagol. But Smeagol is now with them. And so it's like Smeagol was chasing them before. In the very first, in the Fog on the Barrow Downs chapter, you had this thing that was following them that was like a red herring. That you thought, this thing following them was really maybe like a Nazgul. But all of a sudden it's Aragorn. And you're like, phew. In Moria, this thing is following them. And you realize that it is Gollum. In this chapter, no longer Gollum is following them. But the scary thing is Gollum is leading them. And he doesn't even know where he's going or what he's doing, to be honest. And you raise this whole different discussion at the end when Smeagol is in the conversation with himself. And I wrote the whole essay yesterday about analyzing the structure of that and how that really contributes to our understanding of who Smeagol and Gollum are as individual people and as, a collective character. And I just think this whole thing is so well written. In that, in this chapter again has a plethora of monsters and beasts. The marsh feels like its own entity. You have these wisps that are coming up that don't feel benevolent. And then all of a sudden you have the Nazgul and the fell beasts coming, and this awful smell. This whole thing just feels a little scary. And then you have something that I think supersedes all the scariness in this chapter, which is that there is evil among them in the idea of who Smeagol is. And that conversation that happens at the very end of this chapter, I think is the best thing that Tolkien wrote, which is the dialogue that happens between Smeagol and Gollum. And Sam overhears this, and Sam pretends, he's asleep. But out of every dark and dangerous thing that we saw in this chapter, the scariest thing to me was that conversation after. And so now it's like evil is actually in the midst with Frodo and Sam. And it just feels so dangerous and so tense. And I am so unsure of this creature, Smeagol/Gollum, that I can't imagine reading this for the first time and seeing all this. And just how Tolkien plays on all of the tension and the horror in all these chapters, and how he builds on just your emotions to feel pity for this creature, but also be terrified of this creature as well. I just think it's an exceptional thing that Tolkien does. And I was writing on this and I could not figure out, really, I couldn't get the words for it. So sometimes when I can't get the words for it, I just like talk it out. And that's exactly what I'm doing right now. I feel like I've maybe gotten a better grasp on it, but I'm very curious what you think too, and how Tolkien actually crafts tension in his stories. If you have any insight into that, please let me know in the comments below. Let me know even just some of how you think he just crafts chapters. I'm interested in that. I don't know how to like put this, but there's themes in every chapter that Tolkien has, but there's obviously larger themes to the story. But then there's themes that maybe he raises in one chapter that he will repeat in another chapter, and like I'm very curious about that. Is even the whole progression of Smeagol to Gollum and how he becomes, you know, this terrifying person that's with Frodo and Sam now, and what he was before. Like I would love to get to the themology, I don't know if that's a word, of who this person is and the horror that he incites, and now he's like part of their group. I guess there's like some deep theology behind it too, because Tolkien was a deep Catholic, so I'm curious about that as well. So let me know in the comments. Maybe the question is, what do you think Smeagol represents? I know that Tolkien, you know, didn't like allegory, and he probably didn't have something explicitly in mind when he's writing Smeagol / Gollum. But I'm curious what you read in this and you see Smeagol and Gollum actually representing in life. I know we've talked about this before with him being an addict potentially, or like I know some of you who are more of a faith background talk about this as being like, you know, someone's struggle with evil versus wrongdoing, or, you know, even some kind of like, you know, evil spirit possession or something like that. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you think. This was just a live processing of me getting so frustrated that I couldn't put to words what this was talking about, so I just needed to hash it out. So totally different video essay today, but let me know what you think. I would really love to I would really love to read what you guys think of this chapter and just like the whole vibe of Smeagol in this moment. But yeah, make sure you subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, and yeah, like the video, do all the other stuff that you normally do, and I will see you in the next one as soon as they're doing yard work over there. Perfect timing. See you in the next one.